Hi guys, and welcome to the Eagle Woodshop. Today I'm taking this 18-inch door and cutting it down to a 12-inch door. The cabinet also had to be resized. I'm going to use an 80 grit sandpaper to knock off the paint on both of these joints. I'm also going to run a knife down the joint to open it up. We're going to be using a boiling water method. I'm ready to cut the door down to a 10-inch door. I'm going to run it through the table saw face down. Now that the door's cut down, I'm going to be taking the bottom rail, sanding off as much paint as possible around the joints. On a cheaper cabinet door, these middle panels slide right out. This one is being a little stubborn. I'm going to run a knife through the joints to try and open it up just a little bit before we boil it. Once the heat gets in there, it'll help soften the glue, expand the joints, and this middle panel should slide right out. I'm going to set the timer at 1 minute. Any more than this and you can end up boiling the paint right off of the wood. I don't want to do that. After a minute, I'll be taking the panel out and working the joint back and forth. Once I start to see it open up, I'm not going to keep pulling on it though. I'm going to put it back in the water for another minute and then repeat the process. Finally, with enough heat, this middle panel slides right out. With the middle panel removed, I'll be able to grab onto the stile and hold the rail and work the joint back and forth. You'll notice how clean the joints came apart, and this is because of the excessive heat. Time to remove any brad nails that are in the joints, sand them out with an 80 grit sandpaper, making sure to keep everything nice and smooth. This will allow me to put the new joint back together with a nice tight fit. I'm going to use the bottom rail as a spacer on top to mark the front panel. This will give me an idea of where that middle panel needs to be cut. It has a recess of about a ½ inch, so I'm going to measure down a ½ inch and trim off the excess. We're ready to put our panel back together. We're going to sand off any excess paint where the joints will touch. This will ensure we get a nice tight bond with the glue. We want as much paint off of the frame as possible before we glue it up. Putting the panels back together, spreading the glue out evenly, and brushing it into the joint. This will ensure a good tight bond. Using a mallet to put the panels back together, lining everything up, keeping it nice and tight. We'll be clamping it and then shooting a couple of 23 gauge brad nails in the back. This will ensure that the panel never comes loose in the future. I've let the door dry for about an hour. Unfortunately, I don't have the same router bit to create the door edge profile, so I'm going to be using the table saw. First, I'll make a shallow cut along the bottom rail and stiles. This will make the same bevel seen on the outside edge of the door panel. I also need to add a 20-degree back bevel on the other side. Again, we're using the table saw. I like that bevel, matched up perfectly. I'm ready to sand out the stile and the rail at the bottom to make sure that the profile matches up. I'm going to clamp a block on that bevel that we put in the edge of the door. Using sandpaper and a hardwood block, I'm going to lightly sand out that profile and make sure it matches. Looks like a pretty good match to me. Looks like it lined up just perfect. I'm going to sand out any sharp edges, knock it down with sandpaper, and now I'm ready for hinges. I'm using the Craig concealed hinge jig on the smallest setting. I'll line this up, clamp it onto the door, and drill our mortise for our hinge. I'll attach the hinges. Now I want to put the door handles back on for the customer as well in the same spot. I'm going to be using the old styles to determine exactly where the holes were before for the handles. The customer is going to be painting this themselves later. I'm just going to hang the doors temporarily just to make sure everything lines up and drill a new pilot hole in the bottom for the customer. Looks like everything lines up well. The doors are even, and we've taken a cabinet that used to be 18 inches and cut everything down to a 12-inch cabinet. So it looks like we're done with this project. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching.